Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business TV show. My name is Jordan Kensington, an entrepreneur with over 20 years experience in launching businesses worldwide. And today we're joined by another very successful entrepreneur and founder. He's the founder of one of the biggest sports brands in the world, Reebok. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Joe Foster. Joe Foster, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Jordan. And I'm pleased to join your show today.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the show. So what we're going to do, Joe, is we're going to go all the way back to the very start. Let's go with the name Reebok. How did that name come about, and what does Reebok mean?
Okay. If you want to go back to the real start, you've got to start with my grandfather.
Yes.
And that's 1895.
Yes.
In 1895, he set up his company, J.W. Foster. He made himself in 1895 a pair of spike running shoes. They were something new. It may have been the absolute invention, or it may have been just a pioneer of that shoe. But he started there, and he had great foresight. He was great with knowing how to influence his brand. And he did that by giving his shoes to leading athletes. And so in 1904, he got 3 world records by Alf Shrub running in one event in Glasgow. But we really got to move forward to the 1920s. That was his belle epoque. We'd gone through World War II, where of course you don't make much progress making running shoes. But in the 1920s, he was to make shoes for people like Eric Liddell and Harold Abrahams, as well as Lord Burleigh, who were immortalized in the film Chariots of Fire. So during the 1920s, lots of gold medals, lots of Olympic athletes shod in his shoes. Then we come to 1933, and unfortunately, at the very young age of 53, he died. I was born in 1935, and I was born on his birthday, which is why I'm called after him. I've got the same name, Joe Foster. But in that, by 1933, he had 2 sons, my father, my uncle, and they were then running the company. Okay, if we go forward again, it's in 1948 when my brother Jeff joined the company, J.W. Foster and Sons as it was called then, and in 1952 when I joined the company. 1 year later, 1953, both of us were away doing national service. So we were away for 2 years. We came back, and we came back to what we saw was a failing company. We had stepped away from the family. We'd had 2 years doing different things. And coming back, Jeff had been in Germany. He'd seen Adidas and Puma. They were growing well, and there was something different, something new. So we came back to a company which was still making the same shoes they'd been making in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and now in the late 1950s, mid-1950s, I suppose, they were making the same shoes. Unfortunately, like Adi Dassler and his brother Rudy, they didn't get on at all. Rudy left the Dassler company and set up his own Puma company, whereas neither my father nor my uncle moved away from what was a living. And that's all it had become, a living to them. We protested. We said, we need a plan, we need salespeople, we need marketing, we need to move the company forward. My father said, it'll be yours when I'm dead. Dad, and we said, well, we don't want you dead. Dad, we don't want you dead. That's not, what we want though, is to do something with the company. Otherwise, this company will die. They didn't listen. By 1958, Jeff and myself now come to your question. And that is, we left the company to set up our own company. And we started in 1958 with the name Mercury Sports Footwear. 18 months later, we were doing very nicely. Our accountant said, you've got to register that name. And we tried, but what we received was a response from the registrar that this name has already been registered. You have to do something different. We saw a patent agent, and I was in his office, and he said, well, if you're going to find a new name, in fact, the people who did have the name registered offered it to us for £1,000. We just didn't tell £1,000. And he said, well, you can take them to court. And I said, how much will that cost? He said, £1,000. So no, there was no way. We had to come, we had to find ourselves a new name. But he said, don't bring me one name, we need about 10. If we've got to push this through the register, we've got to make sure that we have a name that we can register. If we go one at a time, we may be here a long time before you have a name. So he pointed through a window, it was a very nice day, and he pointed to a sign, Kodak. And I said, why Kodak? And he said, well, it's a made up name. It doesn't mean anything. So nobody can claim they own it. Right. So I went back, we all sit down, we go through all the names, birds, animals, you name it. But in 1943, when I was 8, I actually won a race. And in winning the race, I also won a dictionary. The dictionary was a Webster's dictionary, which is an American dictionary. I don't know how American dictionaries came during the war to be given as prizes, but that was it. So I'm sitting down, I'm looking through the dictionary because I like something to start with letter R. I felt it was a strong letter. Excuse me, I'm just thumbing through this and I come across Reebok, hard to believe, B-O-K, a small South African gazelle. So that's where the name came from. And as it happens, when I went back to the patent agent and said, look, we need this one. We have got to be in love with this name because we've got to be passionate about what we're doing. And it so happened, it was the only name that came clear. However, the registrar said, you can only go in Part B of the register. We said, what's that? Well, he said, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm making shoes out of Reebok skin, I can't stop them. However, 20 years later, the registrar came back again and said, we've moved you to Part 1, the A section. Oh, he said, because now everybody knows that Reebok is a shoe.
That is an amazing, I guarantee you there will be so many people around the world who wear Reebok that will never have known. I mean, this is one of the brands, fashion brands that we own, Deschavelle, a luxury fashion brand. And it kind of reminds me of how we registered Deschavelle and trademarked it and came through that story. But it's incredible, the stories behind names. Now, Joe, as you said, you were born in 1935, and obviously your granddad had already done a legacy with his shoe brand and with the sports and running industry. What I want to know is, while you were growing up, did you feel that you had that entrepreneurial spirit in you? Because obviously you went off and did loads of different things before you came back to see the company as a falling company, and you decided to let's do something about this company. But whilst you were growing up as a teenager or into your 20s, did you have that burning spirit to become an entrepreneur?
Well, certainly if you talk about being young, I probably didn't even understand the word or even know it existed. I think it's well into the language now, but even when we went to the forces, we came back out, we came to see a failing company. What we saw was sad, was failing. We didn't see that this was the time to be entrepreneurs or do something. We had to do something. We had to make a move. Now, whether that spirit was there all the time, I guess what was there was that we were young, we were
Definitely.
Indestructible.
Definitely.
And being indestructible, we could just do anything we wanted. And we knew that we had to leave. And so we left with no money, very little anyway, just enough to buy second-hand machinery and rent a very old building. But I guess that when you do that, you think, now we can win. Now we can do it because there's nobody to stop us.
Fantastic. And now, Joe, the company became so big that at one stage, 60% of Americans who were wearing any kind of sports gear had Reebok as their number one. And he also moved into Europe and the rest of the world. My question to you is, why did you decide to have that strong connection with Bolton? Bolton is kind of like where the brand was born and bred. And you decided, unlike many big companies, to stay grounded to where you came from, launching sponsoring the Bolton football team, and then also sponsoring the stadium. At one point, it was Reebok Stadium there, Bolton. What made you feel so passionate about a big company still retaining those roots within where it came from?
Well, I think really what we start with is the fact that we were manufacturing. We were actually making shoes. We were not just marketing and selling. We were making. And Bolton was just really down the road, as it were, 10 miles away from the footwear making area of Lancashire, the Rossendale Valley. And what Jeff and I did, of course, is we'd only learn what we could do on the factory floor. That was our knowledge of footwear. So we had to go to night school. We went to learn more about the business. Now, that helped in two ways. One, we did learn more about the business, but we also made a lot of contacts within the footwear industry. So this sort of cemented us, if you will, into that area because we were manufacturing. It wasn't until years later, and it starts off because I knew that when we move over from manufacturing, we move to marketing. And what is your market? How big is your market? Well, the UK is not a big market for running shoes. Certainly it wasn't then. And being in that side of the business, we were too late for soccer or football boots. That had been taken by Adidas. Although grandfather, in his day, he supplied 96 teams of all the leagues that you can mention in the UK with training shoes, and a lot of them with boots. So, but I say, father and uncle, it was just a living for them. So they were just making whatever business came in. So we were still manufacturing, and I knew the bigger market was America. So in 1968, I took the first trip to America. It was supported by the government. They would pay our airfare. They'd pay for a stand at the NSGA show in America, which is the National Sporting Goods Association of America, and that's in Chicago. And in February, it's very cold, I can tell you. But I went there with a friend, and we exhibited. Okay, I got a lot of people who loved the shoes, but the Americans said, where do we buy it from? And I said, England. And they were saying, New England? No, not New England. England, across the water. Oh, look, when you get a distributor over here, we can make them available, love to buy your shoes. So that was the first lesson. The first lesson was I needed to get product to America. I needed someone to distribute. And it took me until 1979. And at 1979, we just developed a running shoe for the running shoe market. And that running shoe market had been driven by, excuse me, Runner's World. And Runner's World was a Bible in America. Everybody read it. And the running market in America was growing fantastically. Nike grew on the back of what Runner's World were doing. And it did their company a tremendous amount of good. So I knew if we could get into Runner's World, we could get the key. And we needed the key in order to get a distributor, because I had 6 attempts at trying to find a distributor, and they didn't have enough clout, as it were. They didn't have what it took to get into the market. They needed a good shoe. They needed something where people would come and buy it. And when we made this shoe, made it for the Commonwealth Games in Edmonton for 78, and it did really, really well. So by 79, I was exhibiting that shoe at the NSGA show. Paul Fireman, he said, I'd love to be your distributor. I also got an offer from Kmart. Kmart wanted to buy 25,000 pairs of shoes, our factory. That was about 6 months work for our factory. But we knew if we got the market, we had to find more production. We also knew we had to get a better price because shoes were now starting to come out of the Far East. So both those things I had in mind, and I had Barter who would help with manufacturing, and I was also talking to some South Korean people who could manufacture at a better price. So we're ready for that. But 25,000 pairs, I didn't feel that was my man. So it was Paul Fireman. And Paul Fireman said, Joe, we need a 5-star shoe though if we're going to go anywhere. And I said, look, Paul, I'm sure we've got it. We just got to wait now till Runner's World bring out the shoe edition, and this was going to be in August. So a lot of things happened in between February and August. But by the time August comes along, I'm talking to Paul Fireman early in the morning and say, Paul, go and get us a Running World magazine from one of the kiosks. It must be out today. He did. And an hour later, he came back to me and said, Joe, we've got a 5-star in Aztec. And also your other 2 shoes, they also got 5 stars. So we got 3 5-star shoes. And that was the beginning of the launch in the USA.
That's amazing. It just sounds incredible. It feels like a film. At that point in your journey, there must have been. You mentioned Adidas. There must have been some challenges that you would have had to face. What would you say was one of the biggest challenges you faced expanding the company? You talked about distribution, trying to get distribution. After you secure distribution and the company now became a little bit successful, what were the challenges you faced at that point? Because obviously the competitors and the other brands were not going to lie down for Reebok to just cross over. What kind of competition did you face at that point when the success arrived?
Well, I think the main problem that came up, we were doing well selling running shoes in America. It was taken up very nicely. But whilst Paul Fireman, he had a business which he closed his business and he decided he would just concentrate on Reebok. He soon found that money soon became very, very short. When we started to supply him from Bata in the UK, that was okay because they gave him a credit line. The only problem with, and this was the big problem with Bata, is that the shoes, they had EVA as a cushion. EVA is a plastic cushioning material, very new at that time. Instead of using rubber, rubber was quite heavy. Even cushion blown, they blow it with air in it and it becomes cushion, becomes lighter, but EVA was very light. Bata, a very big company, so big they had their own rubber factory. And so they decided they would make the EVA themselves. Well, they did. But unfortunately, it was so new to them that a lot of the sheets that they produced were not cured enough. And so when Paul got the shoes, and the 20,000 pairs, when he got those shoes, a lot were coming back with the midsole, the cushioning sole, failing. It was just collapsing totally. It so happened that he ended up not paying for any of those shoes because he just had to give more away and sending them back or doing whatever wouldn't work. So he didn't pay for them. So at 20,000 pairs there well, he sold them, but if any faults came up there, he would just exchange the faulty shoes. Meanwhile, we were working with South Korea, and South Korea was coming on, but with South Korea, you didn't get a credit line. If you wanted to buy from South Korea, you had to put up a letter of credit, which means you were to have the money, or your bank had to be ready to lend you the money. And of course, with not much of a track record, we're only new on the market as far as Reebok were concerned. So getting hold of money, that was the number one big problem. So first problem was shoes failing. Second problem was how do you grow in America unless you've got a good credit line? And this is where Stephen Rubin came in. We met a few people, but Stephen Rubin, he was Pentland Industries, which is the UK, and one of his companies was called ASCO, Associated Shoe Company, and they worked out of Hong Kong, and their primary job was to source product for companies in the UK, essentially in the UK, because as it was Stephen Rubin, Stephen thought that he could have Reebok help him get to some of the big accounts in America as well. Paul wouldn't have anything to do with that. He said, no, we're Reebok. That's it. But that's where he got the money from. The other thing that happened here is that down in California, we had Angel Martinez. He was a tech rep. And the tech rep just went around just checking that the retailers knew what was doing when they were selling a shoe, pointing out the good things. But living in LA, his wife, Frankie, she was going to these aerobic classes with her girlfriends. And they were coming back and they were really hyped. They were fantastic. And Arnold got a bit interested and said, can I come down and see what this is about? So yes, he went down there and he saw the instructor. she was wearing a pair of running shoes, and few of the girls in the class were wearing running shoes. The best didn't have any shoes on. He had a light bulb moment there where he thought, well, why don't we produce a glove-like shoe just for aerobics? And that was the beginning of freestyle. Paul didn't want to know at first, because what's aerobics? There's a few girls dancing in in Los Angeles. But Arnold went round his back and managed to get production to supply him with 200 pairs of shoes, which he let the instructors have and a few of the girls. And that was the start. With glove leather, it wasn't too clever because it would rip apart very quickly. But quite soon, we managed to get a soft leather from the tanners, which was much more substance. Glove leather is only 1 millimeter thick, so you can imagine that's not much. And it does tear just like a piece of paper. However, we got the leather right. And what we found then is that Reebok, we've been on the market a couple of years, a bit more, in running and doing very well. But we're not a big company. We were not seen like Nike and Adidas as male and sweaty. All of a sudden, we became the woman's sports shoe company. We were this nice company producing this wonderful soft product that women liked. And it just went, apart from Jane Fonda wearing them in her videos and all the girls wearing them, it became such a unique shoe that suddenly all the women wanted to wear them, not just for aerobics, but on the street. And so that's where the company, that's when it really grew. And it grew from $9 million to $30 million to $90 million, $300 million, and then $900 million in successive years. And by the time I retired at the end of 89, we were about $3.5 billion.
That's amazing. That is absolutely that's a history lesson, Joe. You mentioned Pentland. We did a partnership with Pentland in 2008 for a shoe through Foot Locker. We worked with Pentland, and they acquired loads of brands as well. The partnership was with Kickers, the brand Kickers that they acquired. But I wanted to talk to you about Adidas. At what point did you decide to let Adidas in terms of, and how did that work in terms of Adidas buying in Reebok or investing in Reebok? How did that all come about? Was that something that you wanted to do, or was that something that you had an offer that you couldn't say no?
Well, I was no longer part of the company, a working part of the company by then. At the end of 1989, I decided we got so big, we were becoming a numbers company. And I've been more hands-on. I've been in building the company was the real good thing for me. I'm taking, say, a flight every 2 weeks around the world, 35,000 feet. I am met at the airport by a limousine. I'm taken in a limousine to hotels, meeting with people, we're just talking. And I go back to the airport and I'm back on another plane. Should I say, the fight, the pleasure, the challenge was no longer there. And we had now people coming in the company who were probably used to dealing with groceries, the volumes, it's just numbers. I mean, we were producing 5 million pairs a month, and that's a tremendous amount. As far as the UK is concerned, it was 15 million flags there, because there's a flag on each shoe and a flag on the box. So all those Union Jacks were going around the world at that point, and so was I. But I decided it was time to move out, step back. And so I retired from any full-time role in the company. And it took until 2005. The company seemed to be doing all right, but I think it did stagnate quite a bit towards the end of the 90s and into 2000. And I don't think it was going too far. So that decision was taken when I was away from the company.
And let's talk about the the landscape now. Obviously, the landscape has changed now with social media and launching brands now. If you were to launch a sports brand in this era, how would you do it?
Well, right now, I mean, it's always difficult to think back. I know what I did when I was 25, 23. I know then what we did. But when you think about today, especially with COVID, we have a totally new scene now. I'm talking to you. Years ago, I would have come down and visited. We would have had chat. You probably don't. But now this is where it's going. It's all going virtual. So everything's going its way. I don't need to take a trip to Korea or wherever. I used to go around the world. Now, if you're launching, you've just got to find your influencers. If you've got a good shoe, and that again is up to design. It's up to knowing your market, where you want to be on your market. Once you've decided where you want to be and you know there is a market there, you use social media to get your message over. But to get your message over, you need to have influencers. You need some of the influencers people to buy. We do know that retail, that the shops now, the main street is now dying. And it's going to keep that. It's a bit of entertainment. Big towns, big cities, London, Manchester, the big cities will still have a nice centre that you go to, and there will be people selling product there. But a lot of the small towns now, you just need to see them, and the retail is dying. Now, okay, what the retail did, the retail was your window. It gave people a view to see your product. Now, this is becoming the window. Social media, I mean, you can sell anything now on televisions, on whatever. So this is where it's going. So yes, I think if I was to do it, I would be designing something which I need to be very much better than I am. I'm not that brilliant at technology. Julie does all that. She's pretty good, but you need to be really switched on, because that in a way is more your business than your product. Your business is how you sell it, and your product. For me, it would be easier to design a shoe than to sell it these days, because you need to have this, you need to do what you're doing. You need to present your product. And so a lot of people these days, they're on the phone for most of the day. They pick up an awful lot of messages. So that's where it would be for me.
Definitely. And entrepreneurs, one thing they struggle is to have a perfect family work balance. How do you manage to, and especially whilst you were at the helm of Reebok, how do you manage to keep that family work balance?
It wasn't very good. It wasn't very good because we used to buy from the Far East, and the major market was America. So you're up very early in the morning to talk to the Far East, and you're staying very late at night to talk to America. That was the big problem. And so in between, yes, we did get some nice social life, but in those early days, it was difficult. It was better on the later days when I was just doing international, and we had all the stars coming to Monte Carlo, and we could go to Monte Carlo for the pro celebrity tennis. Those were some very glamorous days. So the family enjoyed that. But in those early days, very difficult.
Fantastic. Now today, 2020, you can still literally see Reebok everywhere in the world. I mean, I'm sure when you're traveling through airports, when you're going through places, sometimes, I remember even 2 days ago, my wife had a Reebok shorts. So Reebok is still a brand you see all across the world. Now, as the founder of the brand, knowing the history, knowing how much work you put into it, knowing the origins of the name, how does it feel years after when you go into places and you see people wearing your invention per se? Because how does that make you feel?
Well, I probably feel better about it now than I maybe did when I retired 30 years ago, because when you're building the brand, you're taking step by step, and you just absorb it. Step by step, you absorb it. You absorb it. Now, but I can look back now, and I do often think, how did we do that? How did we do it? What happened? I think, I was going on I was on flights probably once a week at least. It did ease off quite a bit, but I was flying somewhere. I was going meeting people, and this growth comes slowly. You go through a lot of agonies, but as the growth comes, you absorb it. And so, a few moments when we sponsored the football team, when we became the #1 sports brand in the world, when we overtook Nike and Adidas. I mean, those are great feelings. And now I look back on that, and yes, it really is a good feeling. And it's nice to see it. It really is. And again, I write a book, and it puts a lot of this into words, a lot of feelings into words that you don't realize when you're growing. But I mean, it is fantastic to look back on it. Yes.
Talking about your book, it's The Shoemaker. How did it feel writing that book? And for readers and upcoming entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs all around the world who will watch this interview, read the interview, and want to, emulate you, what do you think this book can teach them, and what do you think this book has done for you per se? Because it always is a little bit cathartic writing a book about the memoirs of your history. So two double questions: what do you think the readers that read this will gain from the book, and on your perspective, how did it feel, going through all these memories to write this book?
Well, a lot of people had asked me, why don't you write your book? A lot of people had done that, and I'd been sort of, well, I put this off. But 7 years ago, I decided, not just simply because I wanted to write a book, but a lot of people didn't know Reebok, and a lot of people had guessed at it. And you looked on Wikipedia, and a lot of people thought that, well, they changed the company name from J.W. Foster to Reebok. No, there's a lot more to it than that. We didn't. We left the family company. We set up a new company. And going through that was, again, as you start working through it, making notes, and things come back again. You start remembering things. And so it's this, like we're saying, when you look back on it, and yes, oh, did I do that? Did this happen? Yes, all these things happen. And I'm sure there were many times when we were finely balanced as to would we make it, or would we fail? But I think it brings back that determination that, yes, there are problems, always problems, but you've got to go through them. You've got to take the next step. So all this came back. And so what I think people hopefully will learn from it is that it's not that easy. You just don't press a magic button and you've got a nice big shoe company. No, you've got to struggle. Not many people will give you a hand up. 1 or 2 people will. I had a nice guy called John Willie Johnson who gave us machinery. Wonderful. But so that you'll find good people along the way. But you'll find a lot of people, a lot of things that happen to you that you've just got to overcome. So I hope that people will see that, well, once they look at Reebok, they think, what a magnificent brand. It took a long time. And writing the book brought it out. And I hope now that people will see that this book tells a story, and I hope they enjoy the story.
It certainly does. Well, the book is called Shoemaker. And Joe, listen, I'm already seeing the film, and I'm telling you that we want to be first in line to produce that film, because I can already visualize how incredible the film will be. Do you see that in the making? Do you see a vision of a film? Because if you do, I'm first in line already.
I think we need the success of the book, and I think, but everybody who's read it so far thinks it's a brilliant book and a brilliant story. I know that Nike, Phil Knight's book, I think he is already going with Netflix. I think it is. I think there's already something there. I do expect that we will get to the point where this is made into a film, because today everything's changed. So you can't just repeat what I did, but seeing what I did, will be incredible. I mean, I did have some incredible moments, I must admit, some fantastic moments. And I think they probably would make a good film.
Fantastic. Well, we're gonna talk about that at some stage because I'm definitely in for that. Now we want to play a game. We do this with all the entrepreneurs that come on the show. It's very simple. It's called Top Five. It's to get to know the top five people that have inspired you and top five things that you like. So the first top five I want to give you is top five global brands who you respect apart from Reebok. It could be from any era. So brands that you think have really stood the test of time apart from Reebok. Top five.
Seen the test of time. Well, one that hasn't yet seen the test of time that I would pick is Tesla. I think that they have brought something to this world, incredibly so. Other brands. Who? Oh, yeah. Julie suggests I say Gymshark, but Gymshark again, an early new company. I like them for being new. I'm trying to go back into where you would go back into time to think. I think people like McDonald's have really done well, and Starbucks have really done well. Those are companies.
That's
service
good.
Companies, but
that's good enough.
Good.
The next one, I'll limit it to three. But if you could do five, that's good. But top five best moments that you would say made you the happiest in your lifetime. It could be during the time of running Reebok, or even now writing the book.
Well, writing the book, I think, has become number one, indeed. But I mean, one of the best moments in my life would be when Reebok became the number one sports brand. I thought that was fantastic. The other moments were when we were actually part of the Monte Carlo pro celebrity tennis tournament, which was in the aid of Princess Grace Foundation. I met some of the very nice people there, John Forsyth, people like that. We had a lot of people who, Roger Moore, Sean Connery. So those moments have got to be fairly precious, being able to meet people like that. And it was great to just be in that group of people for a period of time, maybe 3-4 years, and be able to step out of it, because that way I can appreciate it. I think if I had stayed in that company, you don't know. But so yeah, I mean, those were great moments. And there were many moments when Reebok won things, succeeded. When Chang and Arantxa Sanchez, they both won the French Open. I forget the day, but that was a fantastic moment again.
Fantastic. Finish the line, I am proud of my legacy because
we achieved what we set out to do.
Thank you very much, Joe Foster, founder of Reebok, and the book Shoemaker is out now. Thank you for joining us on this week's The Business TV show. And I'm looking forward to you being on the set of the film, The Shoemaker, because it's got to happen. We've got to make it happen, Joe. We have to make it happen.
Okay. Yes, well, I'm sure you keep in touch with Julie. She does all the hard
the business side of things. Fantastic. Take care, Joe, and my regards to Julie as well. Take care.
Take care to you as well, Jordan. It's been lovely speaking to you.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.